Right now, we're in a very frothy AI market. Every new model that comes out is more impressive than the last. AI music is going to really stress the production library world because production libraries have kind of been created to create an easier music solution than licensing a famous song. So in many cases, I think the royalty-free and production music landscape is going to go through an upheaval.
On this episode, my guest is the CEO of the sync clearing platform Chordal, Grayson Sanders. The current processes for licensing and syncing music are archaic and a landmine of legal issues. Chordal has developed technology that helps rights holders get more of their music legally synced, and that helps supervisors and brands get easier access to the music that they really want to use. Grayson is a former film composer who learned the hard way about the difficulties around licensing music. He helped start Chordal in 2018, and recently the company announced a landmark deal with TikTok to integrate Chordal's instant clear technology into the social platform's commercial music library. During the interview, we talked about the challenges of music licensing, navigating pricing and fair market value, the impact of AI on music licensing, and much more. I spoke with Grayson from his office in Los Angeles. So, licensing music is a hassle. Up until Chordal, anyway, it seemed like that was never going to get better. So explain how Chordal helps that process along.
Well, so Chordal's been around for about 6 years. We've only really been commercially active in the market for about a year and a half. So it took us a number of years and a lot of industry perspectives, a lot of people weighing in on this from different angles to establish essentially a slightly new proposed workflow for how music rights holders could improve their licensing, essentially like practices and efficiencies. And it all boils down to this concept that we came up with called collaborative rights management, which when we first came out and started going around town proposing the idea to people 2018, 2019, we had a number of doors essentially slammed in our face saying, this is never going to work. No one shares data between companies. Music industry is, not good at collaborating historically in terms of data sharing. But the general thesis that I've been trying to convey this whole time to everyone is like, look, the interesting part about music intellectual property is that although we are competing out there in the marketplace for catalog and for signings, we are also partners with one another on individual copyrights. That's, the interesting part about music copyright is that it can be shared by multiple stakeholders. And so maybe maybe it could be a worthwhile pursuit to create an environment where it's not complete transparency between companies, but if you share rights on a copyright with another company, maybe you could have shared access and visibility over that asset, and both parties could commingle their data around that single asset so that eventually when a buyer or a licensee, as we call it, comes, well, they have everyone in one place. And now they've got this streamlined and very collaborative way to reach into all the various stakeholders that control those shares. And so that's kind of like the hypothesis behind Chordal. Of course, we've built a lot of, functions on top in terms of how to deliver a good user experience for people. But under the hood, it's really about how can we deliver a collaborative rights management experience for the music industry.
This has been a stumbling block for the longest time prior to Chordal and what you're doing. Do you have an estimate of how many songs are not licensed as a result of the way it used to be?
That's a really difficult figure to estimate. I think that the reality of licensing today, or even up until quite recently, is that you have a pretty broad spectrum of people that maybe on one end of the spectrum don't have any exposure, understanding of the fact that they need to license music or the processes for how they do it. So they end up maybe accidentally infringing or doing things they shouldn't do. Then you have this middle section of people who they want to do the right thing. So they're trying to do the right thing, but they want to use a famous song and they're knocking on the door of a major record label or publisher saying, hey, I'm producing a wedding video and I would like to get approval. And they're never going to get an email back because those deals are simply not big enough to warrant the attention of a legal team at a major. And then I think you have the top of the pyramid, the big projects that are, warranting the focus of the teams working at these major rights holders. It's really impossible at this point because there's no data aggregation source of truth that's monitoring the people at the other end of the spectrum who are just simply not getting answered or simply not, getting a license over the line. So for us, of course, we're really trying to help streamline the people that are working on the top of the pyramid. But I think we're most interested in terms of an opportunity for the music industry in all the other pieces, the middle and the bottom, right? That's the piece that is maybe expanding the pie, as it were, expanding the potential revenue that artists and songwriters could be making if those processes were more accessible and streamlined.
Well, I know user-generated content is, that's a really big source right there. There'd be a lot more deals if people knew how to do it, I think.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Tell me about your instant clear technology.
Sure. Yeah. So now that I've explained just a little bit about the collaborative rights management approach, we've started to now introduce like licensing products on top of that. So we have this great foundation of a fairly broad and massive catalog of music that is represented by active rights holders in the network. It's not just a static, rights database like a PRO. It's dynamic and backed by users. So now we've got these engaged users that are ready to license. So we've now started to build tools for them to license their rights end to end in a more streamlined way. And so Instant Clear is the first licensing product we've launched, and it's focused on helping these companies get into that middle and lower middle part of the spectrum. This is an area of your business that you're not really servicing at all. And if you're trying to currently, it's probably pretty operationally costly for you to do it. So this technology can come in here and do the work of potentially hundreds of clearance people that don't have the bandwidth to clear licenses at the $1,000 price point or the $5,000 price point or the $500 price point. So what it basically does is it creates a system where a brand or any type of licensee, a production company working on reality shows, for example, can come into the system and they can propose the licensing terms and the budget that they have. And on the licensor side, the rights holder side of Chordal, they have the tools to directly sign a contract through the system with that client and basically say, we're going to pre-clear a portion of our library for these terms and budgets. And then what Chordal does in the background is it looks at every song and it looks at the percentage shares within every song and looks at each rights holder that control those shares and gathers those clearances on the song. And then once all the parties have cleared their shares, that song goes over to the buyer and it can be licensed instantly through a single invoice and a single contract signing. So, if you're familiar at all with the old school way, that license for 5 stakeholders would require 5 contracts and 5 separate invoices. And so if you are doing, a license for $1,500 for just like a reality show queue, that's a pretty expensive license to process as a company. It's like very slow and it's going to take your team a lot of time. And that's why these things just aren't really being done at scale. And so through Instant Clear now, that buyer can basically say, cool, here's what I got to offer. Here are the terms that I have. And then I'm just going to sit here and then get the music that I'm eligible to instantly license as I go. So now social media teams at a big brand can sit there and just pull songs from the system that are ready to go at their budget and license terms. And they can just easily pay. So it feels like a library, but actually they're licensing high-end commercial music.
What determines the price?
It's an offer-based system. So the buyer makes an offer. Yeah. And we have tools to help educate them on what fair market values are in certain medias if they're less experienced.
I think that's important right there. If you're doing this for the first time, or you're just not aware, you don't know what the going rate is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is actually, you're touching on one of the biggest challenges in the pre-cleared licensing space in general, which is you've got this one camp that is thinking, well, if we need to get sync licensing to the next era, into the next era, we have to deliver like a marketplace, like an e-commerce type of experience where someone can come and toss a song in a cart and just swipe their card. But in order to do that, you would need the rights holders to preset prices on their songs. And sync is very different than digital music stores, because sync is so dynamic and nuanced, and you're pairing, one piece of art with another piece of art. You've got artists and songwriters who are very sensitive about who's using it, what brand it is, for all these reasons, it makes it really difficult to sit there and look at a giant catalog and be like, okay, this is going to be 1,000, this is going to be 500, this is going to be 2,000. So in practice, it's not as easy as it sounds to just say, like, let's set up a store and then people can add to cart. So that's why we sort of flipped it around, and we mirrored it a little bit more in the way that the sync business currently operates, which is, I'm a licensor, I've got my own catalog, and I've got an opportunity, and I can evaluate that opportunity. And so now the challenge for us is educating a wide swath of buyers about what they should be expecting when they're trying to license certain things.
I have some personal experience as a buyer in this. I was a producer on a pilot for a TV show called Desert Island Music. And what we do is we'd interview a famous musician, and we asked them mostly about their influences. And they talked about all the songs that influenced them and how they did. And of course, what we want to do is play each one, and there'd be 30 of them.
Yeah, right.
So when we took it around town to sell, everybody freaked out. Every network said, "Are you kidding me? This is going to cost so much." And not only that, the time to clear everything, and it basically shot it down. And we had no idea, being sort of neophytes, and it was like, well, it's a great idea, but it's not going to happen because of this. So yeah, I have personal experience. Sad personal experience.
I can understand. I can relate. I mean, I guess it was just relegated to a project you could watch with your friends at home.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was good. We did 3 episodes, and it was good. Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's conversation. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever boosted or cut with EQ but still couldn't get the sound you wanted? That's why I designed the Magic Frequencies cheat sheet to guide you step by step through the EQ frequencies to make your mixes shine with professional clarity. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes for your free copy. Now, back to the episode. You just recently did deals with Cobalt and TikTok.
Right.
And I'm not sure about Cobalt, but with TikTok, I guess that would be mostly for the UGC, right?
So it's actually for brand accounts. So the TikTok partnership is with their commercial music library offering. And for those of your listeners that aren't familiar with this, a couple years ago, TikTok had been experiencing a lot of infringement on their platform. They had a lot of brands posting videos either knowingly or unknowingly with popular music in them. And in our space, that would historically require a sync license in order to do that. And so TikTok needed to put up a little bit of a barrier between people that had business accounts on the platform and then everybody else, UGC. If you're UGC, if you're just an average person signing up for the app and you pick a song to add to your video, those songs are covered under a blanket license that exists with most of the major rights holders in TikTok. But brands now were put into this other area where if they wanted to post a video, they were directed to a new library to select songs from. And those songs were, for the most part, library music, production music. So not popular songs. And the reason for that was because for all the things that we've already discussed, it's pretty complex to manage all the complex rights on all these commercial songs, number one, and also be able to report to everyone and pay everybody out based on their shares. You need a whole startup product just for that. I mean, that's what we did. But we started working with TikTok about a year and a half ago to explore building the solution to help them scale up getting commercial songs into this library to be available for brands, and also streamline how the payments can get routed back through a single pipeline to all the labels and publishers without TikTok needing to build that. So as of just a couple months ago, now if you're a brand on the platform and you go into your TikTok app and you click add sound and you start looking through music, you can pull a song that's come from Chordal and add it to your video, and it could be a popular song from a well-known artist, and you can post, and you can also purchase ads, and a percentage of that advertising revenue comes back to the music rights holder on Chordal as a revenue share. So it's actually it's a great win-win in a lot of ways. It's fast and streamlined for a social media manager at a brand to just post a quick video, but it also means that the music rights holders are getting a quite scalable and passive income stream off of this platform, and that was not the case before.
What's going to happen with that deal when the TikTok US deal happens?
Ideally, nothing. And from our current standpoint, nothing would change with the deal. Obviously, we hope the deal goes through for the US. Our deal's global anyway, so if it did go ex-US, we'd still be serving the rest of the territories. But if it moves to Oracle or whoever the buyer ends up being, I don't think that our current partnership would be disrupted.
Tell me about AI content. So if you have video content and someone wants to add music to it and they're not generating it via AI, there's some issues there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, that would just fall under the same issues that currently exist with non-AI generated video. It would be a song that's not licensed. There's actually more of a concern, I think, right now with the converse, generative music.
Yeah. It's legitimate music that could be used in certain situations. There's a lot of pushback on it, but does it matter to you? How it's written, generated, produced?
No, I mean, on one hand, I think generative music is really exciting. I think it's pretty impressive what can be done. I get the question quite often, is this going to completely upend the music industry? Is this going to destroy sync licensing, for example, when anyone creating a video can say, I want it to sound like, two cowboys riding off into the sunset and with a Neil Young aesthetic or something, and get a song that's reasonably good sounding and put it to their video. I like to keep an optimistic perspective on this. I think that right now we're in a very frothy AI market where people are trying things and experiencing things for the first time. Every new model that comes out is more impressive than the last, generates these like viral moments. You've got fake bands that are breaking the internet right now. I'm saying, oh my gosh, everything was fake. The photos, the bios, the music, wow, incredible. Real bands are dead. I really don't believe that's going to be the case. I think AI music is going to really stress the production library world, because production libraries have kind of been created to create an easier music solution than licensing a famous song. So in many cases, I think the royalty-free and production music landscape is going to go through an upheaval. But as more supply enters the market of AI-generated stuff, and when anyone can make anything, I think it's going to actually add more value to the authentic artist-generated music or artist-produced music that is tied to human beings that have cultural capital, right? So I think it comes down to the communities that you're building online, the connection to your fan base, the work that you're doing on the road. All of these things as an artist are building that authentic connection. The actual recorded music is just a piece of that. So to say that, well, now because all of this music over here is being produced to prompt, is going to completely destroy this music over here that's being produced traditionally, I really don't think that's a fair comparison, because this music over here is like a vessel to further the relationship with a real person. And so as it relates to sync, we have seen some really interesting case studies that have been done by brands and advertising agencies who have A/B tested AI music and production music ads against ads that are paired with bands or artists. And in so many cases, the emotional equity that is generated in that for that brand or for that product as a result of the ad with the real artist performs better. So on a purely data analysis, empirical basis, there's evidence to show that people connect with stuff that's real still. So I really don't think it's going to destroy the music industry. I think it's going to challenge a lot of existing models out there. And it will certainly be a new competitor in the overall market for music.
See, I think the best thing an artist can do right now is leave mistakes in because it shows they're human,
Yeah. Like a wrong note in the verse, like, okay, this has got to be real. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Do you have a product for songwriters and artists?
Not as of today. We are a business to business platform currently. So because we've taken on a really challenging area, it was really important to us to slowly and very thoughtfully scale with solving problems for first the companies that are doing this professionally every day and still encountering massive issues. And once that was established, to then expand the net to artists and songwriters to be included in that vision. So the next step for us is, and this is actually happening very soon, as a matter of fact, is to extend a type of account on Chordal to artists and songwriters that is limited in scope. So it's not a full, set up your catalog and pitch and license type product. But if you are connected to a work or recording on the platform, you have a seat at the table for how you can approve and sign off digitally on syncs. And so that data that is going to be coming through those accounts is going to be super valuable and helpful for like labels and publishers, because right now that's a huge pain point for them trying to expedite their syncs. So it's this really crazy machinery behind the scenes. Whenever a sync happens, we've talked a little bit about it already, but you have a label who gets an opportunity and they're like, ooh, this seems like a good one. Now we need to ask the artist for their approval or ask the manager, wait, where do I find their contact? Oh, wait, I need to go into the original contract in some database somewhere to see like who we need to ask for what. All of that is going to be captured digitally, and that's going to speed up a ton.
What's your background?
I was originally a film composer. Yeah, so I went to school for classical music and focused in film. I got out of school and was cobbling together a musician's income. I was touring in a band, working on experimental music, scoring documentaries. And a couple years out of school, I got really fortunate that a friend who had gotten into the publishing industry reached out to me and asked if I wanted to get involved in sync. And that was actually something that I had not really been exposed to before. I was actually shocked that in my 4-year fancy university degree, they didn't teach us anything about this really important way that artists can make money as composers. And if you're not a pop star, for example. And so long story short, I got pretty lucky to have landed some significant syncs pretty early on and right away, and was really impressed with the economic outcome from that, having been a broke musician. And so that sort of set me down the path. A couple years into that, I co-founded a licensing agency with my friend and partner, and we started representing other composers as well. So in addition to myself and his work, we started representing others, and then grew it quite successfully in the entertainment space for about 10 years. And then we were just doing the job the long way so much, and we had seen so many colleagues in the space saying the similar things about their issues they were encountering, that we thought we would take a stab at doing a tech solution. And just as a fortuitous coincidence, we crossed paths with a development firm that had been building a music platform already. And we pitched our idea to them. This is back in 2018. And they were really excited and into it. And we combined forces, and that became the new company, Chordal. And so we were very, very lucky. It's quite unheard of as a new startup to essentially get 8 full-time engineers in-house right away. So it allowed us to build very aggressively and quickly, and something that is, quite ambitious in scope.
How has it changed from when you first started?
I would say that we've pretty much stayed the course from the beginning on our long-term roadmap, which I'm proud of. It's quite easy in startup life, in tech, to get distracted by bright, shiny objects. You have all of these buzzy things that come up, and then you have everyone telling you, hey, in order to get venture capital interest, you need to go be Web3 now, or you need to go add NFTs to your product or whatever. And I'm sure from hosting your podcast, there's so many waves of trends that come through every industry, really. But of course, in the entertainment business, there's this thing of like, well, this is the new thing, and everyone runs over here. We've done a very good job, I'd say, of staying the course. The challenges for us have been, and this is probably something we underestimated, were more around the narrative with these large enterprises, like the time it takes with a big company to change the way of thinking and methodology is extremely protracted, extremely long. It's like to get the Titanic to turn an inch to the left, you need about 5,000 miles of lead time.
Yeah.
And so that has been one of the biggest learning experiences for me, is just, I call it group therapy. It's like you have to go into these companies and sit with the teams so often and with so many different stakeholders and sell an idea that doesn't exist yet in its fully formed way. And luckily, I think we're coming out the other side of that now. But if you would have asked me that in 2023, maybe I would have been like, oh boy, this is intense. Yeah.
What don't people know about you that you wish they did?
That's like the hardest question that I've ever been asked. I am a vintage synthesizer collector. I'm a massive nerd when it comes to music technology in general, but I'm a huge fan of vintage analog equipment. I know that's not the most exciting piece of news, but the way that I like to spend my time is tinkering with stuff. So outside of this company, I have a number of little side projects, which I will not divulge the names of, whereas sometimes I just produce like a tape loop album and release it, just all sorts of stuff like that. So I've got a bunch of different monikers out there on the internet.
Yeah. What kind of synths do you have, out of curiosity?
A variety of them. Actually, my favorite, I think, is this synthesizer called the Lyra 8. It's by a company called Soma Labs.
Yeah.
And it's have you heard of this?
I have,
before? Yeah. It's a really interesting piece of kit because it doesn't have any keys on it. And I'm a pianist by training. So before going into being composer, I was studying classical piano really intensely as a kid. So the thing is, with like when you know an instrument intimately, you can kind of get trapped in going to the stuff that your muscle memory intuitively does when you sit at the keyboard or pick up a guitar or whatever. And what I love about that instrument is that it's completely ephemeral. So there are no keys, no fixed pitches. You have these essentially oscillators that you touch with your fingers, and they're capacitance. So they turn on when you touch it and they stop when you release it. And you can just create these drones with your ears. And it's a beautiful instrument. Really interesting. Some of the most interesting. And the other thing that's also cool about it is it's not, there's no computer on board. So basically, once you finish your session, you're never going to get that sound ever again.
Yeah, I love that.
So I love that because it forces you to kind of sit down, dive in, use your ears, use your intuition, and then you better record it because that thing's never going to happen again.
Talk about the ultimate in analog, the ultimate in human creativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you play keyboard at all, or you're into synths too?
Yes, as a matter of fact. And I used to be, way back when it mattered, the proud owner of a Mini Moog and ARP 2500, 2600. and Odyssey. So yeah.
Oh wow, the 2500. That's a beautiful, beautiful synthesizer.
I go way back on that stuff. I wish I still had all those, but so
They
it
went
goes.
down the tide.
They paid many months' rent. Let's put it like that.
Ah, yeah.
You know what
Tales
it's like.
all his time.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I actually did at one period of time, around the time back when I was still touring bands right out of college, I was in that hustle of buying a synth and then, you'd sell it, but then you realize you'd sell it to like pay rent or pay bills. And then a couple months later, you'd buy it again from
Yeah.
Craigslist.
Yeah, right. Vicious circle, yeah.
Yeah.
Last question, Grayson. You've been through an interesting journey, so I'm sure that you've received some advice along the way, or maybe you learned something. So what would be that best piece of advice that you learned or was imparted to you?
I think specifically as it relates to sync, I think, 'cause I know you're not asking specifically in that context, but I do find it to be relevant ultimately in the big picture. It's like when you come into the industry and you look at the current opportunities, it can easily feel like they're being controlled and gatekept by a relatively small amount of people, and it's impossible to break in. And I think that's something that young artists feel very intensely before they have representation or companies representing them. And it's not that that's not true. It's just that there is a huge wealth of opportunity surrounding, like outside those walls, that you can create for yourself if you are a free-thinking, enterprising individual. And so the people that I see doing the best out there, and this is not just in music, but in general, in startups or entrepreneurialism, are the people that look at a minimal set of tools that they have, maybe just 3 tools, and one contact, and they are able to turn water into wine with those very, very small set of limitations. And so I think a beautiful analog to that is like in the creative process, sometimes the best stuff happens with just a single instrument or 2 instruments when you're limited by your resources. And so pretty early on in my career, I had a mentor who was saying, yeah, it could look like a steep mountain to climb to become successful as a musician, or to have a big startup that's, making tons of money or solving the world's problems, whatever. But you can't start by looking at that end result. You have to start by looking at the raw materials that are sitting in front of you and figure out your own personal motivations and competitive advantage with those raw materials, and just continue to do good work. And the cream always rises. That narrative ends up writing itself, And I think that's been one of the most compelling and important pieces of information that I received, because along the way in any journey, especially in the difficult times, especially in the times where there's like paralyzing self-doubt, or you're just getting like continually beaten down with getting told no over and over again. If you keep going back to this, look, I'm just going to believe in the work that I'm doing and using these resources thoughtfully and intelligently, you look back and you realize you're already halfway up that hill a few years in. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's certainly been useful for me.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.